Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 53 of the ITSM crowd. We've got a change of pace today. We've done a lot of methodology stuff recently, but we're going to dig into a little bit about consumer experience and how technology can actually help improve consumer experience, particularly around IT support today. So I'm really looking forward to this one. We've got two guests with us. We've got Martin McKenna and Sanjeev NC. So the first thing I'm going to do is just ask you both to introduce yourselves, please. So Martin, if we can start with you.
So I guess these days I'm best known for running IT in the Park up in Scotland, IT Service Management Conference, and I know both of our other panelists have been up to Edinburgh to see what's going on.
Yep.
When I'm not doing that, I'm currently writing a guide for ITSM tool selection. And in a previous life, the confession is that I used to sell IT service management products and indeed work on service desks way back in the past as well.
Thank you very much. And Sanjeev?
Hey guys, so I started working in a service desk about 5 years back as L2 support, and then slowly made my way into Freshworks as a product consultant and currently a product evangelist, which means I get to travel to conferences and get to present. And interestingly, my first ever presentation at a conference was at IT in the Park. That's Martin's conference. So it's good to kind of do that here.
I didn't know that was the first time.
Yeah, that was my first time. Yeah.
It must have been a professional one then, no nerves. My name's Clara Agutter. I'm going to be the facilitator, I guess, for today's session. I have a lot of questions, so I'm looking forward to this one. If you've got questions as you're watching this live that you'd like to ask either of the panel members, then pop them onto Twitter, use the hashtag ITSM crowd. We are watching that live as we broadcast. So if there is anything you want to know, then we'll pick that up and we can put that to the panel while we're on air. Obviously, if you're watching on catch up, not as effective, but we will still see them. Okay, so definitions. I always like to start by making sure we're all quite clear on what we're talking about. And I think particularly gamification is kind of one of those words that is bounced around quite a lot and people don't always necessarily understand what it means. So I guess, Sanjeev, if you can kick us off, please, and just explain to us exactly what we mean by gamification.
Okay, I'd love to do that. So gamification, one of the reasons that I even kind of, chose to talk about it, because I realized how, badly the term is used and it's misunderstood a lot. So I borrowed this definition from a book called Actionable Gamification by this gamification expert called Yukai Chow. So what he says is most of the systems are function focused. For example, they just assume that, you put out a rule, people expect to follow that rule and it's going to happen. So gamification is actually human-focused design where it considers things like, humans' feelings, their motivation, and what do they like, what do they not like. And the reason it's called gamification is because the gaming industry was the first to master it. And that's simply why it's called gamification, because you don't necessarily have to play games, but you can't understand, why kids would spend hours playing games that are actually really tough for adults. I used to spend a lot of time playing games. And I don't have a clear reason. So I think that's where gamification comes from. It's a system designed considering human emotions and human factors versus a function-focused design that just puts out rules and expects everyone to follow it. So to me, that's gamification.
That kind of busts a myth for me already, because I thought gamification was kind of giving people badges and hitting levels if you close your service desk tickets. So that's immediate ignorance exposed.
Yukai Chow's book, and also my session title is called Beyond Points, Badges, and Leaderboards, right? So gamification beyond these things is what that is unexplored, and that's what I hope to kind of talk about and break.
Yeah, and I like that concept of human-centered design, because I think if we do just focus on badges and levels, that can be quite abusive design.
True, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Martin.
Yeah, I was just going to chip in there that, way back in the 1980s, when they first introduced video games, they introduced the clever concept of having a leaderboard on video games. And I would go and spend my money on a video game, and there might be a fruit machine next to it where I could potentially win something. but I was more interested in getting my name on that leaderboard. And I think that is still how lots of people assume that's how gamification works. It's all about just being top of a single leaderboard and trying to close lots and lots of calls. That's not how gamification should be applied at all. And I mean, things have moved on. If I even take my two nephews at 13 and 16, I will see them playing video games, but they're already collaborating in those video games. So the two of them might be collaborating to shoot a monster or something like that. And then they'll be sharing how they've achieved things within video games as well. So they'll share clips of how they've solved problems and moved forwards to get to different levels. And it's not all about just being on a leaderboard. They're collaborating and sharing how they're solving problems. And for me, gamification should be much more focused around solving problems, customer satisfaction, reuse of knowledge, entering knowledge, and certainly not as a sort of KPI busting tool for banging down your list of calls. If you do that, people will cheat. You know, they'll find ways of making sure they're closing more calls than somebody else. It's not a good metric. And interestingly enough, there was a post out on a well-known Facebook page, which we're both members of, I think, saying, I'm thinking about doing gamification. Should I go down this route? And there was a whole bunch of people, experts, saying, don't go down this route. Don't go down the gamification route. It's bad for KPI focus. It's going to ruin your stats, and it's just a fad. So I then put out a post saying, everybody who's advising this, have you actually tried gamification? And then there was a sort of stony silence. And it was like, well, do you still think it's 1980s, just a ranking up and down? That's not what it's about. And I'm sure that Sanjeev has probably got some examples of where people have used gamification successfully within their organizations.
Yeah, and I prepared this for my presentation, right? So there are a lot of companies that kind of use gamification, and so-called serious companies. For example, Google. And again, most of my knowledge is borrowed from Yukai Cho, but then he's really good, so I don't have a problem kind of quoting him, right? So Google, got designed a travel expense system that came close to 100% of employee compliance. And travel expenses, we all know how boring that is, right? Maybe I don't know if you guys know it. Every time I come back from a travel, that's the first thing that I dread. Okay, I have to take a copy of all my bills. I have to take a photo, upload it. And something as boring as this, or something as necessary but then not so enjoyable, gamification can kind of help stay within the rules and make sure that people find a reason to do it. And you have all these, we see this in the real life too. Amazon, like the moment they say that only one left in stock, that is a gamification technique right there. So in fact, I think it's called I forgot the game technique. So Yukai Cho actually has techniques for all these. So you have like something called the glowing choice technique. You have something called I'm not getting the names, but then even that is a gamification technique to kind of make sure that you're buying that and you don't want to miss out. So it's like a version of fear of missing out. You have all these mild, subtle gamification techniques that are kind of implied. You don't even know it's gamification, but it's there.
I think it should have a different name, frankly. I mean, it should be more about motivation than gamification. I think two of the words, that game for gamification and chat, I think those are very casual words for actual customer interaction and ways of motivating people, which are far more sophisticated.
True. I think the reason that, like I said, the word gamification kind of came up because games kind of solved for it. I don't know if they meant to solve for it, but then you could get someone to play games for hours without giving them an incentive. And that's kind of what I think these guys are hoping for. So hence the word gamification. But you're right, Martin. I think it implies or it conveys much more than just games.
Okay. So we're kind of linking this overall to IT support, and I think gamification is one of the the big changes that we've seen, but the other one is self-service as well. So kind of two fairly significant shifts in the IT support sphere. Martin, I invited you onto the panel because I occasionally see things on LinkedIn that make me think you've got some quite strong opinions about self-service. So I wonder if maybe you want to kick us off with a definition and how it kind of fits into this discussion.
Okay, so I suppose I'm here as a bit of a devil's advocate, and to throw a few curveballs in. I think I look at self-service, and probably over 15 years ago, I started to demo self-service products. And we still haven't got them right today. 15 years later, we're still going on and on and on about how we're doing this to improve customer service, or in the last few years to shift left. And it never is about customer service. Self-service products tend to be designed by IT people for IT people because they all think everybody loves self-service. And it's just not true. So as an example, in the run up to this, I was talking to my other half who works in the NHS, and I was talking about what I was coming on to chat about self-service, and asked whether she'd got a self-service portal. And she said, well, what's that? So I explained the concept that you would go onto the portal and help yourself. And she just said, well, isn't that IT's job? Absolutely no desire to go on and solve her own problem, period, full stop. And I think that there's a lot of people who don't want self-service anywhere near as much as IT people think they want self-service, because they want it, and that's the way they want to solve problems. They're quite happy to go around. And the difference is, if a bunch of knowledge articles pop up, if it's any of us on this call or anyone watching, they'll probably know which one to select that's likely to solve their problem. If you're not in IT and those articles start popping up, then the chances are you'll have to go through the whole lot of them. And more than that, you won't know which one's going to fix your problem till you get to the end of that knowledge article. So I think that there are a lot of issues just in that simple element. And if I jump back a while, self-service is about logging and tracking calls. We've got that nailed. Frequently asked questions and news, got that nailed. Common requests, password requests, account requests, got that nailed. Product catalogs, got that nailed. But the bit we haven't got nailed is how to get customers to resolve their own issues. My own feeling is we don't really want to do that. We're forcing them to do that because we're closing all the other avenues into the support desk, and then claiming there's a massive uptake in self-service. Everyone loves it. It's gone up 300%. You've closed everything else off. And then if you back that up with looking at some of the data, so if you go and Google happy signals, you'll find there's a whole bunch of data that they've collected, the guys over in Finland, from thousands and thousands of calls to determine which is people's favorite route into a service desk. But the more important figure for me is the time wasted associated with each call. Now, if you look at their time wasted associated with self-service, it's 3.47 hours per call. That is compared with around or less than 2.5 if it's chat or if it's a phone call. And that doesn't include the time that we're not seeing that people are wasting. So when people are logging on and going through knowledge articles, and they go through 5 knowledge articles and they don't find what they want, and then they log a call anyway, we're not seeing that, because hardly anybody is actually tracking user behavior on a self-service portal. It's nearly always blind. And we're letting our customers go on and wander around. We're closing the door to IT, and we're not doing anything to help them. And I don't think that that is the way that we should be. So I have seen some products starting to use heat maps to detect even user interaction. So it actually is watching you go around the website in the same way as it would do for a sales website. But what it does is then routes your call to a qualified operative based upon where you are on the site. So if you've been looking around how to set up an email account and you've been there 10 minutes, it might pop up and say, "Hi, I'm Sanjeev. How can I help you set up your email account? Because I see you've been looking at FAQs." That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
But in most cases, we're just not there. So, and the other element I have that's a bit of an issue is so many people are putting so much time into setting up their service portals and closing everything down that they're not focusing on the next generation of people coming through and what they want. And what I mean by that is how the younger generation want to interact with IT.
Yeah.
And for me, that's all about, as I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, collaboration and rich instant messaging. So I think that rather than the next generation of people coming through wandering around some massive, endless load of knowledge articles, that actually that they will want to get straight in, talk to somebody who can then, via video links or via a document, just ping them what they're looking for. And that can all be done through rich instant messaging, which some people would call chat, but I'm going to say it's rich instant messaging. And the interesting thing is some people, when I mention that, they kind of, what a ridiculous way. Nobody's going to use that to go as a way into the self-service portal. And then you say, how many of you are on WhatsApp? And suddenly they're all on WhatsApp. What do you use WhatsApp for? Or communicating and sharing files or pictures or videos. And well, why wouldn't you do that as a way of sharing stuff with the service desk and the people who've got the knowledge and get to quickly to resolve issues? And the light switches start to switch on. And it's just interesting because they can't say they're not on WhatsApp because they all are. I've got two 80-year-old parents who are on WhatsApp.
Wow.
And happily share stuff with their 13-year-old grandson on WhatsApp internationally and collaborate. They've even accidentally found that you can fire off a video call. So I think they just pressed the wrong button and video calls started. So now video calls happen fairly frequently. There's a few missed ones, but they happen quite frequently. And the other thing that I think about when I think about the next generation of people coming through is that they already know the answers to all the simple questions. Okay, they're all tech savvy. So all this stuff that we're setting up for self-service in terms of frequently asked questions and knowledge articles about simple things, they're never going to use them because they already know the answers. So the result is that the call levels will drop and the calls that are remaining will become more complicated. So they won't be things that you can easily resolve by going to a self-service portal. You will need to have more interaction with whoever's on the other end of the instant messaging or the call on the service desk, and they may well need to bring other people into the loop to collaborate as well. They're not going to be easy.
I was just thinking that there does almost seem to be a conflict here in what the industry is espousing, in that we've got on one side self-service, which is putting the onus onto the user, find your own resolution. But then we've also got this concept of swarming, which seems to be becoming more and more popular. John Hall from BMC has written some really good articles on medium.com on swarming. I'd recommend you look at that. But that's kind of more that model, as in when a user raises an issue, the best people are there and they're there immediately to collaborate until it's clear who's actually going to fix that. I mean, Sanjeev, what do you see with your customers? Are they open self-service? Is it increasing?
Yep. I think the problem is clearly established, right? So we don't want to spend agents' time on smaller issues that could be fixed by the end users themselves. But then what we don't understand is end users don't care about your tickets. They just want to solve their own problems. And if you're going to make self-service stuff, if you're going to hide self-service behind a portal that they have to kind of remember a password to log in, search through your articles and find what they want, they're not going to use it, and you can't blame them for it. They have better things to do. They're not going to spend time on the portal. So I have this thought process that self-service portals are probably not the best way to deliver self-service, right? Because imagine, as an end user, I'm in my office, I'm used to tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams, and I'm not gonna hop onto a different website, remember a URL, and then go into that portal and solve my own problem. I'm just not motivated enough for that. So unless you can give self-service to where I am, and you can figure out a way for me to kind of interact with the self-service portal or with the knowledge base or with, let's say, even an agent right where I am, I don't have an incentive to go to the portal. So I think agents and IT leaders, when setting up the self-service experience, should kind of take that into consideration. People don't have the time to kind of spend hours on a portal. They might as well just walk up or call someone to get what they want.
Yeah, I think I would totally agree with that, and also I agree with Claire. Go to John Hall's site and blog and have a look at his stuff on swarming. It's really good. And I suppose the bottom line is, why do we do level 1, level 2, level 3 support? What is the point in that linear, old-fashioned support where if it's a level 3 call, you're going to have to wait a week to get it solved? When we can bypass all of that through collaboration.
I think the statement is that, see, there's a problem and that needs to be solved, right? And if you can get the best people on it right away, why wouldn't you? Why do you want to make that ticket go through a process and wait till it reaches the best person? And that's why I think even the ticket approach, which also I see John talking about a lot, I think the ticket was designed for a world that wasn't moving as fast as this. And right now we're in a fast-moving world, we're in an agile world, and the ticket just doesn't seem to work because it follows a lot of rules. It's rigid. So I think this space has kind of is up for disruption, and I think someone should definitely disrupt it soon.
I think picking up on your point about not wanting to swap tools as well, I think that's going to be really important going forward. And I was in the middle of writing a document about instant messaging and how I seen that as a real powerful front end towards support calls. And then what happens? Mr. Zuckerberg comes out and says, "Oh, we're going to unify the messaging platform that lies underneath WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook Messenger, and you won't need to change products to get messages from each of these different products." So in one foul swoop, he strangely enough, he's slightly ahead of me for some reason. But the point really was, from whatever product you're in, you need to be able to get to where you want to be. And exactly as Sanjeev said, I don't want to go and log out and then log into something else to go and find something. I want something that is instantaneous, and instant gratification is what it's all about for certainly for the younger generation who will be in our management teams in 5 minutes time, I think.
Because look at what we're used to, right? We're used to Amazon, we're used to Uber, we're used to in India, Swiggy, I don't know, I think it's like an Uber Eats equivalent, where if I want to reach support, there is no calling. I just go onto the app, click on I need support, and the support rep instantly knows what's going on. They know my order, they know what was my last ride, and if I want a refund, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm used to on the consumer world. And when I come into the office, why would I expect anything different? I really need the same experience where when I'm talking to an IT agent or I'm going to, consume self-service, I need that rich experience that can get me what I want quickly. Otherwise, I'm just not going to bother. Maybe go to a shop and just buy my own laptop and just start working on it. I don't want to spend time on things that I know is not going to add value. I mean, it's a very straightforward way to say it, but then that's how I would say it. We really need to kind of understand people's feelings when they try to, do these things.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I'm kind of love to move us on a bit, but I think I have to because we are running out of time, weirdly. But I wanted from both of you, I think, really just to get some tips. So for people that are watching this, starting to think about self-service. They've been wondering about gamification. Maybe they've got access to something within a tool that they already have. Just where should people start? Where should they start to think? Is there anywhere they can go look for resources? Sanjeev, if we come to you first.
All right. So I think for self-service, implementing a self-service portal is not the way to start, right? I think you should really look at spend time understanding your end users and really trying to kind of draw like a process map of what they do, what is the behavior like, kind of like a persona, right? For example, if they're a set of people who are on the road a lot, you probably should consider mobile experience. And if they're the kind of people who kind of don't use communication platforms and they're on like different tools, you should try in-app support, like get self-service where they spend most of the time on. And these kind of things will come up if you spend time researching on these kind of practices. So I've done the video with Freshworks Academy. That's something might be of interest. It's the same thing that I talk about. I think with self-service, there is no one size fits all approach as with anything else, because it really depends on your audience and your end user. So I would say spend a lot of time understanding them and then devise your self-service strategy versus just going out there. You know what? We need a portal, we need an email. So that's not how you should go about it.
And what about gamification?
Oh, gamification is
whatever we're going to call it. No, we're not calling it gamification.
I think with gamification, because I wouldn't call myself an expert, but then I really find this fascinating. So I would recommend everyone to go to Yukai Cho's website and really understand what he talks about. So Yukai Cho has this framework called Octalysis, where it talks about 8 core drivers for human beings. And then if none of these 8 core drivers exist, no behavior is going to happen. So I think as, let's say, leaders and as people who are responsible for strategy, really understanding these 8 core drivers and designing processes, making small changes in your organization to optimize for these feelings, these motivations will really help. But again, we need to gamify this, or gamification cannot be a project. It needs to be something that's kind of infused into everyday practices, and it's really about motivation and people than about gamifying anything.
Yeah, so it's not about picking up the latest buzzword. It's thinking about what your consumers actually want. That makes sense. And Martin, what top tips would you share with people?
I think that there's probably a few. If you are going down the self-service route, I think one of my top tips would be to make sure you've got your knowledge sorted before you get started. And that's because I see so many demos of products, and you'll see, oh, I've got a printer issue. And you think 4 possible solutions appear in front of you. And you think that's just not reality, because I might have a couple of 100 printers. If I write printer problem into the knowledge and expect it to come back with the correct answer, it's not going to do that. Not straight away. So if you're going to have knowledge bases which are self-searching, then they need to be much, much, much better. Have a look at KCS as a way of structuring knowledge and a way of policing the knowledge in your knowledge base, so that you know what's being used, so you know what's effective, and that you can continually replenish that. So that's one element, I would say. If you're going to do that, that's one of the big failings at the moment. And the other one, and that chimes with Sanjeev again, is go and ask your users what they want. And try things out on your users before rolling it all out and calling it a service portal, and they don't even know what a service portal is. So, perhaps give it a name, Frank or whatever, your virtual service agent. But go see your user base first, and please let them try out instant messaging as a way of communicating with the service desk, as an alternative to what we may term traditional service portals, and just measure the results and see what they come out as. Because I'm pretty sure that if you go to a university where you've got a whole load of young people, they're all just going to say, well, forget that rubbish old way of working. Give me rich instant messaging where I don't have to change platforms at all.
Good tips. Thank you. And just very briefly before I wrap us up, Sanjeev, where can people see more from you? Have you got a website? Are you on Twitter?
Twitter and LinkedIn. And I also blog for ITSM.tools and our own Freshservice blog, but then Twitter and LinkedIn is where I'm mostly at.
Perfect, thank you. And Martin, where can people find out more information about what you're up to?
Best place is LinkedIn for me, definitely.
Okay. And what date is IT in the Park this year?
It's December the 11th this year. It was December the 11th last year. And so that's good for me because there's a bunch of materials I won't have to change.
There's a reason for everything.
But you can sign up today. So there you go.
Yep, it's one of the friendliest service management conferences that I've been to, and it's free, and it's an excuse to visit Edinburgh in December, which is that's a pretty good reason to go as well. So thank you so much to Martin, Sanjeev. That's been a really, really educational discussion. That time's absolutely flown. And thank you to everybody who's been watching as well. Our next episode is going to be on Verism. We're going to talk about Verism and other frameworks, and a little bit about the impact of the new ITIL 4, what that means from a Verism perspective. So you could join us for that one in April. Thank you for watching. Thank you to our panel members, and I'll see you on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Claire. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.